Welcome back to Combat Sports Weekly. This is the part of the show where we take a look at the national and local headlines. The national headlines are loaded. Let's get those going right away. Luke Rockhold and Lyoto Machida took place on UFC Fox 15 over the weekend. The bout ended via second round submission rear naked choke by Luke Rockhold, of course, who dominated the fight from beginning to end. He now moves up to #1 on the UFC middleweight rankings. Another guy who's moving up the rankings is, of course, this guy. Ruslan Provodnikov lost to him. Lucas Matthysse. Ruslan Provodnikov was, put on the pressure on Lucas Matthysse for the 12 rounds that they fought. Majority decision went in favor of Lucas Matthysse, who now moves up to the #3 spot in their division. Another guy. Fighter of the Year 2014, Terrence Crawford defeated Thomas Delorme. He came back to stop that fight, 6-round TKO. He now claims the WBO super middleweight lightweight title. Super lightweight title in a fight, where he dominated the second half of that. It was a pretty good comeback by him. Another guy who did not come back or have a good comeback, Chavez Jr. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. lost to Andre Fonfora in Carson, California at the StubHub Center. It was a fight that he lost by 9th round TKO. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. retires on his stool. So, not a good comeback for Chavez. Another guys who were on a comeback trail coming back from battling cancer, of course, Anthony Durrell and Daniel Jacobs will be fighting on separate bouts. Both are cancer survivors. Of course, in Chicago, Illinois, Durrell would take on Badu Jack in the main event, WBC super middleweight title, and Jacobs will be facing Caleb Truex for the WBC middleweight title. So definitely guys worth checking out. They did overcome a lot over the last 2 years to win a world title. We move on. UFC 186 this weekend. Demetrius Johnson is in action against Kyoji Horiguchi. This is the 6th title defense of the flyweight belt for Demetrius Johnson. Hopefully having Quinton Jackson back on the card helps that. We'll actually have Demetrius Johnson as one of the topics that we'll be tackling there for our roundtable. Another big news, UFC. Albuquerque's Tim Means will be fighting Matt Brown July 11th. On the UFC 189, Aldo versus McGregor undercard. Of course, Matt Brown ranked #5 in the world. Tim Means wanted a huge guy, a top 10 guy. He ended up getting a top 5 guy. So very big fight for Tim Means and his quest to be ranked in that division and ultimately move up for a world title. Two guys, both former world champions here. Austin Trout and Anthony Mundine will finally do battle. These guys had a Twitter beef for about 3 years, and they're finally going to get it on. It was made official last week. PBC on CBS, May 9th show in El Hidalgo, Texas, for the WBC Silver Super. That's the Super Welterweight title, 154 pounds, of course. So that'll do it for the loaded national headlines. Let's go to the local ones. In a fight that was unfortunately not televised for us here regionally, Abie and Fernando Guerrero did battle. Guerrero walked away with the majority decision. A lot of ringside observers felt that Abie did a lot to actually, win that fight. But again, he loses by decision. This is the second time he's kind of lost on very close fight, competitive fight. So unfortunately for Abie, but he's going to be a tough out for anyone from here on out. His sister, on the other hand, in El Paso, Texas, won an intercontinental title against Fatuma Zarico, who replaced Helen Joseph. Of course, Helen Joseph owns the world title, but unfortunately because of visa issues, had trouble getting into the U.S. But Han has been promised a world title fight in June against Helen Joseph, so that's something important to keep a lookout at. You could, rest assured that that fight will happen in El Paso for June. We'll keep you updated with that fight information. Cutting Edge, King of the Cage is taking place Saturday night here in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Hotel Cascada. Doors open at 5 p.m., so definitely worth the action checking out. They always have at least 15 fights, a mixture of professional and amateur fights. King of the Cage tends to deliver consistently, so that'll do it for the national, local headlines, completely packed. Let's take a look at some of the highlights for some of the fights we just talked about. Lucas Matthysse and Ruslan Provodnikov in a battle. I mean, this was just epic. It lived up to the hype. It's always good to see fights come down to this. Provodnikov landed some bombs. Lucas Matthysse, however, did a very good job of boxing, fighting behind that jab. and was able to pull that majority decision. Nonetheless, it thrilled the crowd in New York who watched this, just 12 rounds of battle. Wasn't necessarily a war, but it was just a pretty damn good fight to check out. Lucas Matthysse, the winner, now moves up to the number 3 rankings in that division. Thomas Delorme here doing work early, the Puerto Rican, against last year's Fighter of the Year, Terrence Crawford. Crawford able to catch Delorme in some of those setups he had, fighting behind that left jab, as you can see there. After a while, the referee finally saw enough. Delorme was taking some heavy shots, despite the fact he was the crafty guy outboxing Crawford early on in that bout. It's a pretty good fight to lead into that Lucas Matthysse-Ruslan Provodnikov fight. So either way, both guys, bright futures ahead of them. Here's a fight from this weekend that a lot of people were disappointed of, especially there in public. Andre Fonfora defeating Chavez Jr. Look at it, showboating a little bit like Roy Jones. Look at that left hook. Timber. Down goes Chavez Jr. Here's the left hook again. Perfectly placed. I mean, no balance behind that. It might be too much for Chavez to fight in that light heavyweight division. He's going to have to move down at least 10 pounds. A lot of us feel for his power to carry over. Fonfora, the winner there in that bout. Saturday night also, loaded night. You had Luke Rockhold. I don't want to say manhandling, but he did put it in work on Lyoto Machida. He ended up flattening him out and ended up choking him out by rear naked choke. Here he is, implementing the hold. Ultimately, he turns him around. As soon as he tightens it out, look at this, here it is. As soon as he tightens it, instantly taps, and then does this really weird Jacare crawl afterward. Not sure what that means, but nonetheless, he moves up to the number 1 middleweight ranking in the world. Luke Rockhold's a guy that we'll be speaking about in our roundtable. But first, coming up, Andres Quintana, one of the best fighters in the state of New Mexico. He'll be here with us, talk about his next fight, talking about his training. So hang out. We got a lot more to come still.